Hey everybody, this is Brandon Quaid, and I am doing the Quaid Difference again, and this is my third episode of the Quaid Difference. And so what the Quaid Difference is, Trish, is it was a hashtag we use, but it came up all the time about why, why go, it's kind of like a question, why go to Quaid Harley-Davidson in another store? And I simply answer that question. It's my people. My people, I think, make the difference of my store compared to other stores. Now, I'm not saying there's not good people in other stores. I mean, we'll talk about that, but I think my people are my store, like employees. When I say my people, I'm talking about employees. So that's what the Quaid Difference is. And I have two main objectives here for anybody watching this is to get to know you and why you work at Quaid. So with that being said, we'll just start talking. So now, a little background from Trish and a little background from the Quaid family. If you don't know, we used to be in the car business. And at one point in the 80s, we had 23 different car lines. Nissan, Mazda, Honda, Isuzu, Jeep, Hyundai, Maserati, Yugo. I mean, we're going way back. I was 16 when I full-time started working with my family back at the car days, the Riverside Metro Auto Group. So if it's, you guys go to off of Adams, it's Nissan, Honda, Mazda, that corner there, that was Quaid Imports. It was actually first called Quaid International Auto Expo, Quaid Imports, and Trish started working for us at Quaid Imports. How old were you when you started working at Quaid Imports, Trish?
I was 20.
20 years old.
1995 when I started, yeah.
In 1995, she was 20 years old. So Trish has worked with my family. But we've had some off and ons, like she's left and come back, but she's back, and we love that she's back. But you started with my family in 1995. You're 20 years old. I still remember. I remember, like, because I was working there. I was 16, and you were walking around, and I think it wasn't long after that you had your first kid, wasn't it?
He was born about 3 months before I started working for you guys.
That's what it was. You were a brand new mom. You come work at Quaid Imports.
Started as a cashier.
You started as a cashier. How'd you get, I don't even know, how'd you get the job?
Another one of my friends worked there.
Really?
Yeah, another cashier.
Okay.
So I had just had my kid and was looking for a job. So yeah, she was like, they're pretty much always hiring.
So did you think 20 plus years later you'd still be around the Quaids?
No, probably not.
So let me go back. So little quick history here. My family, I've got my dad and 4 brothers. My Uncle Bob was the founder and starter of all our businesses and passed away. But that's really quick, given the background. In the car business, it was Glenn Quaid, Bob Quaid, Glenn Quaid, and my dad, Gordon Quaid. So those 3 always worked in the car business together. And I started working with them when I was young. And then we go into my Uncle Rich that started Temecula Harley-Davidson. He worked in Michigan with big manufacturing companies. But the quick background is my family grew up in Detroit, and they all went to General Motors colleges, which have fraternities. They're real big and split from the car business. And Rich went one way, my dad and his brothers went another. Eventually, they all ended up back together in the Harley business. But going back there, of all the Quaids, like, which one was most impressionable on you when you started out? Now we're talking about ponytail days, big gold chains. I mean, we're talking about we're talking about a bunch of car guys that belonged in the Harley business.
I do remember everybody, Bob, Glenn, your dad, all wore very colorful suits, like teals and reds and like colors you wouldn't really expect.
I used to tell my dad it was like Miami Vice.
yeah,
right,
for sure. Yeah, very colorful but they were still wearing suits and ties, so that was a lot different from here.
Yeah,
and there were some pretty bright colors going on.
So which one of the Quaids, like that, when, I don't know, you're 20 years old. I remember when I was a young kid, I always, even though they were my family, I always looked at my family in awe in some ways. Like there was always big personalities, so I don't know which one was a bigger personality on me, but at 20 years old, as a girl coming into a car business, I mean, did Bob leave a big impression? I mean, or Glenn?
Probably Bob. I mean, he was really good about like promoting from within, and if you wanted to learn another department or do something else, like, because I moved around through started as a cashier, but then I moved up to eventually ended up in the warranty office. I worked in the body shop for a while, and then I was doing reception. So it was kind of cool because I got to learn a bunch of different things.
Right.
And, you know, they were just always supportive. Like, you know, if you want to try this or that, or, you know, if this department's not working out. Like, so.
Well, I remember my Uncle Bob through his whole life, he had daughters, you know, so I thought he had an extreme amount of love for the girls that worked for him. And I always saw them get really good opportunities. But, you know, there's some, you know, that still work for us today, like you, but he always had a lot of love for girls, you know what I mean? You know, I remember you being one of them. He would give you any opportunity that you wanted to go for, you know. So I started as a cashier, and then you end up in service. And then so in 1996, we bought Dale's. San Bernardino, Harley-Davidson bought Dale's. It was on Baseline and E Street. That's a fun little fact for anybody listening to this. My uncle got approached by a prostitute once and asked to buy drugs twice before he stepped in to Dale's Harley-Davidson. I remember I was in high school and I would do maintenance. I think I was like 17. So I think you moved pretty quick because I'm doing the math here. I was young and I started doing maintenance over at Dale's. And I remember, you know, this was kind of news to me, but I remember looking out the window and seeing guys deal drugs as I'm changing light bulbs in San Bernardino. So San Bernardino was on Baseline and E Street, and I remember the liquor store right across the street was full bulletproof glass, right? I remember the first time I remember this, I had to buy a soda, and I put my money in the box, and they spun a box. It was like 2 feet long, am I right?
Yeah.
And they put your drink in and spin it back, and I found out that place had been, I don't know, shot up numerous times. I think they did like 3 episodes of Cops on that corner.
Probably.
So how old were you in 96? Yeah, I think you went to the Harley store right away, right?
I went in 97 to the Harley store, October of 97. So they had it almost a year before.
So you were 22 years old.
Over. Yeah.
So you're 22 years old. You had 2 years in the car business, and now you get thrown into motorcycle Harley-Davidson business. I never worked at Baseline, but you did.
Yeah.
And that's pretty. So what was that like? What was it like working at Baseline? I mean, the first Quaid Harley-Davidson store, and we're talking about probably 1,200 square feet.
Yeah, it was tiny.
1,500
there
square
was no
feet.
space. Yeah, it was super tiny. I mean, obviously compared to here, I mean, that whole store could probably just fit in our service department now.
For sure.
So yeah, it was small. We had a lot more bikes to push around and move to even just, you know, we had maybe 1, 2, 4 technicians, and then we hired a 5th one and had to put him back in like the oil room because there was no room in the main area. One guy's stall was like up against a bunch of shelves because like we just had to use
just do whatever
the
you
space
could.
that we had.
And this was back in the days when we were allocated. Excuse me. I think when we were allocated about 45 new bikes a year. And most people won't believe that, but when we bought that store, I think all we got is 45 new bikes a year plus, and you had to earn more. So it wasn't all about selling motorcycles, more like it is today, right? But because it was, you know, most of these stores started as a service department, like a service shop, and you sold 2 or 3 bikes a month. And you know, I remember back in those days, I remember watching guys walk in like, "You have a Harley for sale? I'll buy it." It wasn't even a matter of what it was; it was that we
just
had
what
one,
they could get,
right? So who did you enjoy it like right away? I mean, what was it like going from the car business, you know, which we had probably, I don't know, 200 plus employees at that 20 something acre place to go into a small Harley store?
Yeah, it was definitely different. Customer wise, it was a little weird for me at first because I don't know, you know, my dad always rode motorcycles, but I was not Harleys, so I was never around like Harley customers. The biggest difference that I noticed right off the bat was that their Harley's their baby, so they're more passionate about it, but they're not as demanding in the way that car people were, because that's their car, they need it, they got to go to work, so they'd be real impatient and tend to get kind of snappy sometimes, and
sometimes
people just love
the car business they got snappy sometimes.
Yeah, so but people just love their Harleys, so they're
so take your time,
get it
more
right, patient and understanding, and they want everything to be good because that's their pride and joy.
But also in 90 and 97, the customer's still a little different, right? I mean, we're talking about San Bernardino Harley-Davidson store in the middle of San Bernardino. I mean, this is a real like old school. I mean, I remember buying that store. We still had that real old school mentality biker thing going on, right? I remember talking to Julie that worked here, and Julie, you worked with Julie, right? And most people, I mean, I'm just telling you how it was. I mean, that neighborhood was so tough. She said she used to walk customers to their cars with her 357 Magnum in her hand, right?
That doesn't surprise me.
Right. So, do you have any like good memories of the San Bernardino store? Or is there like a favorite guy you worked with? I mean, you worked with some interesting people like Mikey and all kinds of.
Yeah, I really do miss Tony. Tony was the service manager there. Tony Denius. He was awesome. I learned a lot from him. Like he was so knowledgeable. He had that racing background and everything, flat track. And so,
Was he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was. Okay. He was big into that. Mikey was too. And
Tony was kind of a, you know, I mean, I'm coming from the car business over too, not a couple years later, but he ended up moving over to Pomona, I think, and was a Pomona service manager. But Tony was kind of a legend in his own right in the industry, right?
Exactly.
Everyone had respect for Tony, right?
For sure.
Now, why? Is his knowledge?
His knowledge, his racing days. He was
really
big in the AA community because he was
sober.
He was sober, and I think somebody else in his family, I don't remember exactly, but yeah, he was big in that community. He was just a good person. Like if somebody needed help, like he would help them, and you know, the customers just loved him because performance wise, you know, back then it was a lot more carbureted bikes and things like that. And he was just like a whiz with that stuff. He was really good at it.
I heard he was like the ultimate motor builder. And, you know, and some of those things that I still remember. And I met Tony a few times, but by the time I came over, we were here at Loma Linda, and I think he had moved on. I know he had moved on by then. So Tony was a big impression on you. Anyone else from?
Ron Fishwood.
Oh, Ron Fishwood, Ron Fishwood.
Yeah, he was a really cool guy, good mechanic, but he just had like a really cool personality.
Yeah,
he was like this grumpy old man, but he was just cool as hell,
So you're 22, and now you're working around, I mean, we're talking like an OG Harley-Davidson store. Did you like going to work every day? Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, everywhere you go, it's still a job, and sometimes you feel like
it's a four-letter word next to shit and fuck, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, the whole culture is different, you know. For the most part, like I said, most people are they're happy to come here because it's their fun thing. It's not. I mean, I guess people would argue with me. It's not a necessity. Some people probably feel like it is.
Well, I'm glad our customers out there. I'm glad most of you feel like it is a necessity because we're gonna have you forever, right? But so you're, you know, we're gonna get into like being a woman in this industry. But what, you know, one of the questions that somebody had asked, I think it was maybe Dakota or something. You have some fans that we work with, but they want to know why service. I mean, because that's a good question, right? Like you could have probably gone another route, but what I mean, it's something maybe about your personality, maybe it's about the personalities in service, maybe it's mechanics, maybe it's, you know, because I spent most of my career in the sales side of things, and you've done all yours pretty much in service. I mean, is there a reason? Like, is it
probably because of my warranty background? Really, I mean, at the time I came to Harley, the only opening I believe was for the service writer position. The girl that they had left, and
did you ask to come to the Harley store? Or I mean, I'm picturing Bob wanting you to come over.
Yeah, right. I was going to. I think I had applied for a job somewhere else closer to home. Because I was kind of getting tired of the reception at the car store.
That's right.
Because that's where I was doing the receptionist job, and that was pretty rough. But
why? Because people are really nice.
Yeah, I remember
in the car business. You're nicer in the bike business, believe it or not.
Yeah. I mean, there were times I would have people just come in screaming their head off at me, and I was like, man, I don't want to die here.
Right.
You know, not that I thought it would get to that point, but it was a little rough. So yeah, I was looking for another job, and I basically had let them know that I, you know, found somewhere else, and
Bob wasn't having it.
And Bob was like, hey, I have an opening at Harley if you want it. It's yours, basically. So I had already done warranty, and the service writer that was leaving, she did all the warranties. So
let me explain, like, so somebody might listen to this and go, what's warranty, right? It's very complicated, right? People think, oh, I'm getting a warranty done, but a manufacturer asks you to submit that correctly. I mean, there's so many checks and balances in warranty to get us paid. I can tell you when she's saying she worked at a warranty department at the car store, and we had multiple manufacturer lines. But how many? I mean, there was I think Jamie, my stepmom, worked at with you. I mean, there's probably 5 or 6 girls, right?
There was 4 of us,
Yeah,
and we each had about 3 to 4 car lines.
It's a very niche-y job to know warranty.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
because every manufacturer is a little bit different. The rules for each manufacturer, they have different guidelines. So yeah.
So warranty is a skill. It's something to look for. And if you don't have that in your store, you got to teach it. And if you don't know it, I mean, it's you cannot get you cannot get your warranty claims paid. So if customers that think, just bring my bike in and get it warranted, if we don't do the right steps, we don't get paid.
Yeah.
And if somebody's not paying attention, there's a certain timeline. We've lost money with wrong people doing warranties because, and that can turn into a $10,000 or $20,000 a month issue. So anyways, that's warranty. That's what you do.
Yeah. When I first came here, the warranty system was so old, they still did paper claims. They didn't even do them on the computer. You had to handwrite them and mail them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're in service and you've stayed in service. You've gone through some managers, right? I think you worked for us. You came over here. You worked from us, and then you left here and you went to Skip Fordyce. You stayed at Skip Fordyce for how long?
Well, I was there until 2014. It had changed hands to Riverside. So I was there from about 2011 to 2014, and then I was at Laidlaw's for almost 5 years, and then I came back here.
Yeah. And what I like to talk to you about, and you and I have discussions about, is like how much you learn from another store, right? Because realistically, I kind of live in a bubble with my store. Believe it or not, I get customers ask me all the time. Just get just a tad bit closer. There we go. We want more, Trish. I ask customers all the time, or they ask me all the time, "Oh, have you been to this store, that store?" Most of us are in the Harley business. Don't go visit a bunch of other stores on our days off. It's not what we do. I go do something else. Yeah, we should, right? And I think you told me, I guess collectively, what did you learn from other stores? Because I don't want to fall in love with the way I do my business, right? I want to always be open and say, hey, there's always a better way, Our way we're going to believe is our way and the right way, and most businesses are going to follow their own model. But then, is there a better way? So I guess
definitely. I picked up a lot of things just that I learned from other people because you get to see another perspective. You get to see how they do things in different places. Not everything that worked over there is going to work over here, and not everything that we do here would work in a different place either. So, but it's helpful to see that the other way that people do things, and you just pick up that extra knowledge and try it, see if it works, and or just tailor it to what you need.
Yeah. So you talking about, well, I guess one reason I really want to interview you is because a lot of people know you in this industry, but a lot of people don't. And so we'll kind of get into some of that. But when you come and talk to Trish, you have 20 plus years of experience, right? But I'm going to get into some of that. Let me go into, and I'm asking every one of the employees, why Quaid? Why Quaid Harley-Davidson? What's the difference of Quaid? You can talk about negatives if you want to, but what's the positive about working for myself, my family? What is it?
Family. It's definitely more like family. I've always, I guess maybe because I've worked for you guys for so long, I feel like your uncles are my uncles kind of a thing.
Right.
I've basically been here since I was a kid.
Right.
This October is from 97 to
2022. Well, 21.
So 26 years.
24.
27
20,
years.
yeah. Am I off? Yeah. Am I getting them out? Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been
That's a long time.
I feel like I grew up here.
Now let me ask you, let me ask you a question, like, because I'm curious. Is there a different customer at Quaid than other stores, or are all pretty similar? I mean, because my thing is that there's A personalities ride motorcycles. And when you get a lot of A personalities in a room or a business or culture, I actually like it because I think everybody's more respectful. And I think that, when you get a personality amongst a bunch of B's and C's, he could be a dick and he could run the show, right? He can boss
Make
the name.
everybody do.
He could boss the name. I know a guy.
Yeah.
I got one of my friends of mine just moved to a really nice place in Orange County, and there's a guy that lives there, and he's an A personality, and he's bossing the whole neighborhood around it. Well, my buddy's an A personality, so in 2 days they have a clash. I see what I see with the Harley customers in general, the industry, the scene is that you got, when you have a bunch of A personalities, I think it's very respectful because I think people are always knowing that you have a bunch of willing people that are willing to stand up for themselves. So why push that button? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, now you have, I don't know why I was going off on that, but, anyway, so now I guess my question was, do you notice any difference of any other customers from store to store? Is sometimes the pendulum swings a little bit. I remember our Temecula store was a little different than San Bernardino store.
Yeah.
Did you notice that from like Riverside, the Laidlaws? Is it
a little bit? Laidlaws is a little more family like this place is, but not Riverside, not so much. Every dealership has people that likes to come and hang out, but I feel like here there's more people that are like that, that kind of feel like this is a second home or whatever. Like I feel like our customers, like sometimes they'll just come in and hang out, they're not even coming for any particular reason, or they'll just want to drop by. And that has fluctuated over the years because it seems like early on that happened a lot.
Yeah.
Like, people would just hang out at the
I felt like the community was a little smaller so that you had more people hanging out and they knew each other. So this has grown so much in 20 years.
Yeah, definitely.
That on a given day, most of our customers don't know each other, but it felt like back in the day they knew each other.
Yeah.
So now from store to store, they're similar customers. It's always interesting to me, somebody says family. I don't know the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always worked for my family, so I run it. We run it the way we run it,
yeah. Well, and that's what I never knew until I went somewhere else. Like what it was like somewhere else. Some places focus and are a little more like corporate type, and even if the family owns it.
Can you open that door and get the heat? Turn the air on. I got my producers back there.
So yeah, it's hard to explain. It's just different, but It's a feeling you get when when you go to a place, you can almost tell right away, like if you feel like they're your people and you click and it's somewhere you're gonna want to be, or if they're rude and don't even talk to you and ignore you when you walk through the door, and you're like, oh, I don't really want to come back here. Like,
Yeah, it's funny, this business, right? I talk to, I don't talk, I'm close to, I have a really good relationship with most stores, but I think it's such a balance in this business, for me and my perception of running it with you guys and employees is that there's a balance between working hard, keeping people on task, performing, trying to better your business, but also having, because I call this the adult playground. So if people were to walk in, if my customers out here were to walk in our store and feel stress and anxiety off of my employees, well, that's what they're going to feel. It's kind of the same thing, right? So I always want people to feel like they're welcome at Quaid and they're having a good time and they're loving it and they feel, part of something. Because I truly do care about my customers. I really do. There's not a customer I don't care. Even the difficult ones, I kind of use that as a goal to get past them, You're never going to make 100% of 100 people happy, but maybe that's when people tell me about family. That's I would like to think if I did something else, I'd still approach it the same way because I don't know how to approach it without owning it, right? Yeah. So now, I wanted to talk to you about, and we've talked about it before. You got a new customer that walks in. One of the questions, let me ask this question. Let's get back into some of your fan questions here. let's get into some of the questions from the employees. One of them want to know, how many bikes have you owned?
2.
2?
Mm-hmm.
What'd you start with?
Fat Bob. I've only owned 2 Fat Bobs.
So you only own 2
Yeah.
Fat Bobs. And I think another question was, if you were owning, right now you don't own a bike because you jumped over to the Jeep world, but I do call the Jeep world the same as the Harley world, because Jeep people will spend shit tons of money on their Jeeps and put every damn accessory on a Jeep, just like Harley people will. So I have a lot of customers that have Jeeps. So it makes sense. But if you were to buy another bike, what would it be? Would it be another Fat Bob?
I don't know. Maybe. I do really like that bike, although the older I get, the more comfortable I want to be.
Maybe a street
like a
glide
Road King
or
or
something.
something. Yeah, I do like the fairing. When I was younger, I always made fun of windshields and fairings, and then I rode to Vegas on a night train and was so beat up from the wind afterwards that I was like, oh, this is why people have windshields.
I wonder if you rode with us. I remember going to Laughlin in it. Then your dad bought a Harley.
He rented. We had rentals.
Oh, he rented a Harley. Yeah.
So every time we went, he rented. The first time I took my own bike, I think the second time we went, I just rode with him on the rental.
Well, and this was interesting. Most people don't know this. We were the first 5 pilot rental stores in the country.
Flying Ride is what we started with.
We started Flying Ride, where you would do that. They call it Flying Ride because you would rent it. You'd fly in from
another state or whatever.
Yeah, it was through corporate Harley. Yeah. Our rentals from ourselves, but we had I remember one year I ordered every single model. So I had like 23 different bikes here for rent. Yeah. And I remember, people getting on the night train, and so I think we rode to Laughlin one year, and we didn't party that hard, did we? We all no, yeah, we partied hard. I remember your dad sleeping. You guys sleeping on the floor. I remember we had this huge suite. I think like 8 of us were in there sleeping. But no, so you've had 2 Harleys. I tell people I think that actually the old Fat Bob was one of the most well balanced bikes that Harley ever built. And I say this one because I always can judge a bike by how it rolls. And I swear to you that Fat Bob was the easiest bike to roll around the showroom. So another question, let's see here. This is one I really want to ask you about. Nick wanted to know, he worked at Riverside, he works with us now. He had a question. He says he always loved working with you. And I asked him why. He thought you were had a really good work ethic. So did you get that from your dad? Is that just something you've always had? Or?
Yeah, I think from my dad for sure, my family, and
your
then,
mom. I don't know. Yeah.
Also working for Don Duffy because he was.
And Don Duffy was one of our old service managers. My dad lived with Don Duffy. My dad was 19, and he worked with us for a long time. And Don was my first boss at the car store, and then he ended up coming over here after Tony. Yeah, that's right. Then he really pushed me, and I didn't always like it, but he taught me a ton. I mean, one thing I know about you, Trish, is that you have a really good. You're tough. I don't know what that means, but you're tough. Like I don't know if you consider yourself tough, but I've seen my uncles come down on you hard, and you stay composed. Yeah. I think it works for you for service because you're not very emotional. I'm sure you have emotions. I'm sure you get upset. Yeah. I'm sure you're just like every other human being, but you don't really, you don't show it. I've never seen you. Not to. Well, you have a good demeanor about you. You're even keeled, even if you're upset. I know you're upset, and everybody knows you would be upset, but you don't seem to, put that out on, anybody else, which is impressive. But I do want to ask you about, and there was a question that came up a couple times, like, is it hard being a woman in this industry?
Yes and no, which my husband hates that. Sorry. Sometimes it's good. Most of the time it's good, but there are times for sure when people will come in, mainly men, definitely. They'll kind of look at me like, oh God, what does she know? Like, I can kind of see it on their face most of the time. And then usually they'll ask their question, and once they realize that I know what I'm talking about, that kind of falls away.
Yeah, but what is like, I mean, what would you, I think it's a good question because, I think a lot of guys out there don't realize what a woman knows or doesn't know, right? And so what does a guy do? What's immediately what a guy does that irks you?
The biggest...
you probably had everything happen to you.
Well, yeah, the one that happens the most, and it can get pretty annoying is they'll come ask me a question and I'll tell them the answer, and then another guy will walk in, whether it's a mechanic or Dom or Anthony, they'll walk in and then they'll be like, hey, and they'll ask them the same exact question. They'll get the same exact answer, but it's like because it came from a guy, then they believe it, so.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I really thought that question is interesting because, we have another manager that says, we've had guys call and, we have, just so everybody knows, we have 5 female managers at our store. We have more female managers than we do men. That wasn't by design. It's just because I think we try to hire talent. I think you girls are very talented that work for us. So it's and it's kind of funny to me because I don't know, there's probably a lot of female managers in it, but a lot of women have passion for Harley-Davidson, right? I mean, I don't know, I got a wife and kid now, and I didn't grow up, my dad has 4 boys, but now I'm around girls, and I see it a lot easier for girls to be around men sometimes. Maybe it's the way girls are when growing up's tougher, but you're just happen to be around men, but all my girls are in a male-dominated type of industry. I think females have really come in strong with Harley, but now, you're in a position where people can be rude to you, and that's happened to other managers also. And one of them said she went to you and said, "Oh, this person said I want to talk to a man manager," and you just laughed, because you've been doing this for 20 years. And how many times do you think? You probably don't even recognize how many times that guy's disrespectful or doesn't take your word. And how many times do you think that even happens in a week, month, or year?
A bunch. The best, though, is when somebody will come, they'll want to ask a question. They'll see me standing, say, next to a service rider, and they'll want to ask a question. They'll kind of look at me, but then they'll look at the guy, and then they'll ask their question. And it's usually somebody that I've trained, and they'll turn to me and be like, "Oh, so what is this?" And I'll have the answer.
Yeah,
and then they kind of like, they feel
there's a lot of people that work for me that they came from other stores, and they're like, "Trish trained me." I was like, "Well, then she was trained by the best, and you're now getting trained by the best." I'm joking, but
yeah, we just have to work a little harder to prove ourselves, I guess.
You think so?
A little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think that people should hear that, because now I can tell you the customers that do know you, just like, you're the best. When you coming back over to Quaid was a huge thing for us. I think a lot of people actually, I'm going to say they left Quaid, but when you moved, it was really easy for them to go to the other store. You probably know them more than I do, because you're going, "Oh, you're from," so you probably have customers that followed you more than you realize.
Yeah,
but
I had a few.
But I think it was great that you came back. I think it was great that you came back to Quaid, because, I'm saying this because I think that people realize, like, if you're at the counter, you got probably the top 10% in the country, and being even, I think, 5% of the country of knowledge at the counter, and you don't have to know, and being at the counter, service writing, service manager, I know what a guy's thinking. I have a ticking noise in the back of my cylinder and it makes a tick, tick, tick. Tell me what the problem is. That's not the answer that my service manager is going to give them. Nobody knows what your tick, 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 bang, bang, bang sound is, right? But you could tell them it might be a cam tensioner on an old bike, a lifter noise. I mean, but I think they expect that, when people pull up, that we have the answer of that noise, right? And it's impossible. I've had motors of my own go out, and I try to self-diagnose. It's not right. So nobody's going to you're not going to self-diagnose your own bike. You're not going to have a service manager and a service writer come out and tell you exactly what it is. It just doesn't work that way,
And we can't tell you over the phone.
You can't hold the phone to your motor, and we're going to tell you what's going on with your bike, right? We've had all that. So, but anyways, Trish, I do you have anything else that you wanted to? You know what? A couple other things. What do you do? What's your favorite things outside of work?
Outside of work?
Well, I got one for you. What's your favorite holiday?
Halloween.
Halloween. Now, if you don't notice, she's
Yeah.
got some ink here, and it has a vampire and stuff. She's always loved Halloween. I've always noticed that about Trish. She's colorful. Her hair's purple one month. It might be blue the next. She's got the nice little fade going on. She's going to do some colors. So You always like Halloween. You've always loved that. I don't know. It's almost like a genre of people like that stuff.
Horror movies, Halloween, creepy stuff.
That's my daughter.
Yeah.
She loves horror movies. You also collect what, tarot cards, is what I hear?
Tarot cards.
Now, what are tarot cards?
Tarot cards are basically.
Is that like the glass ball with the? Is that what they're flipping over?
It's not a crystal ball. It's like I mean, you always see it in movies, and it's always related to scary things, but it's actually not. It's more of like an intuition kind of a thing.
Is it something that you look at and you feel something for you? Is it just more of like a hobby?
It's like a hobby. I like the art of it, along with the cards themselves have different meanings, and you can use it as a tool for almost say like a meditation or something along those lines, like basically to kind of like use your intuition. I don't know how to explain it.
The other thing you're really into, which my wife is into, but we're going back to the car days, my uncle was into essential oils. Love them. I actually love them too.
Bob's the one that
he was one of the first. I never even heard of him until my Uncle Bob. That's like 92 or something, right? Or whatever. Or we know it had to be. Well, he might have been in before you.
He was probably into it before I met him.
Is there anything else that we don't know that you're super into? You have Marcus, your son. Yeah. He just got married. How old's Marcus?
Just got married. Just bought his first house.
And how old's Marcus?
26.
Trish, you're so young. So you got your boy's 26. You have dogs?
Nope.
No
I
cats?
have a bird.
You have a bird?
I have an African gray.
Really? That's
I just got her. I just adopted her a couple months ago.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Let me double check if there's anything else that I missed. Not really, but thank you, Trish, for letting me interview you. And I just want everybody to get to know Trish. I mean, I really want to leave everybody to know that when you talk to Trish, she knows what she's talking about.
I don't know everything, but if I don't know, I can find out.
But she's smarter than you men. Remember that. So don't question her. I'm saying it. So, but you're a pleasure to work with every day, Trish. Everyone loves working with you. You make everyone's job better. So thank you very much. And, if you guys have any questions for Trish, if I missed something or something somebody wanted, reach out socially through our wherever we're going to put these videos. I got Kristen, she's running it. I call her my producer now, so ask anything, Trish will answer it. And if you really want to get to know it, you got to bring your bike into service, and you got to ask for Trish, and Trish will help you out. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right.